You're listening to Finn Voices on Healthcare Now Radio, where we highlight and amplify the voices at the forefront of health innovation that improves people's lives. Join us for an inside look at the change makers driving conversation and answering the most important questions in healthcare today. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome to Finn Voices. I'm Goel Jasper here in Tel Aviv, Israel, and I can't wait to speak with my guest today. We'll get to him in a second. First, be sure to follow Finn Voices using hashtag Finn Voices on Twitter and LinkedIn, and listen to our show live on healthcarenowradio.com. You can also follow me at Goel Jasper on LinkedIn. I'm excited to welcome Eran Eshed to the show. After working 20 years in telecom and communications, Eran began shifting to AI, and then 3 years ago co-founded Fertility, a company that's trying to change how IVF is approached, thanks in no small part to AI. Eran, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Goel. I'm excited to be here.
It's great, and listen, for the sake of the listeners, you and I go way back.
We do.
We knew each
Absolutely.
other when, but I want to go back even further. Did you always know you were going to be an innovator? Like when you were a little kid, like what were you into, and like when did you realize, hey, maybe, technology is a cool thing?
Yeah, I think the definition of technology kind of changed over the course of the last, 30, 40, or 50 years that I've been around. I did always like to take things apart and then, put them back together.
Like
So
when
in
you were a
that
kid?
sense, I think I always had these, this inclination for, engineering stuff, but engineering is not always innovation. And so innovation is something that, it's a concept that I think, for me became more significant, at age 35 plus.
So until then, like when you were like a teenager, or maybe that's a bad question, but maybe when you were in your early 20s, like what did you want to do? Your degree was in engineering, right? So you already had some thoughts.
Yeah, I'm an electronics engineer. My dad, was and is too. He's got, a lot more degrees than I do. But I always found it appealing, the whole engineering concept. And in fact, when I went to school, the university, that is, this was 95.
Right.
I was seriously contemplating between mechanical engineering and electronics engineering. And at the time, they just looked, pretty cool, both engineering-wise, because there was no high-tech scene. Today it kind of looks obvious to me that, this is the tech scene is where I really ended up and I wanted to be, but at the time it did not exist. And it was just about, I had a motorcycle which I would, build and take apart. So it was cool. Engineering, that's what I liked.
This is really interesting to me because, as you said, this is before Israel was like the high-tech scene that it's become, one of the top 3 tech hubs in the world, probably, maybe even top 2. I mean, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would say so. Top 3.
Top 3. And even back then, you said your father was also an engineer. So you're putting together and taking apart motorcycles. So why did you go electrical engineering?
It's a good question. I don't know. There was something intriguing about this. It was kind of a new thing. I remember that when I did my bachelor's, there was a new and amazing course that was introduced, which was it's called VLSI, basically semiconductors.
Okay.
And then they introduced it and they canceled it because there was no one to teach it.
No one to teach it. There were plenty of students, so no one to teach it.
Yeah, there was no one. The knowledge was not there. This was the very early days of chipsets, and semiconductors. But that thing really intrigued me, and I said, "Listen, I'll try to get admitted to both, and I'll figure it out." So I somehow ended up in electronics engineering. I'm glad I did.
Right. Sure.
But it was kind of casual or arbitrary.
Yeah. So after college, what'd you wind up doing?
So I started working for a startup company that mainly did performed projects for customers. I figured, it was a good place to gain experience because you got involved in more than one product or one project, and that was a really good experience. And then I continued into another startup company in the computer vision printing type area. And in 1998, I joined a company that was a year later acquired by Texas Instruments. So that really kind of took my career more into the hardcore, semiconductors, wireless communications, broadband communications, which is what I did for the good part of that 25 plus year career. So that was a significant episode in my career.
Yeah. So were you jazzed about it? Were you just like, hey, this is a good career, so I'm sticking with it? Like, were you excited?
No,
about
I was very excited.
Really? What was exciting about it?
It was new stuff. I mean, these things didn't exist. When I was a student, I worked. I started by working as a watch guard in a bank, but then I went into testing software. Software was very different from what it became.
Sure.
And at the time, the internet just started. And this whole concept of the internet and being able to connect with people and access materials online and search for stuff was simply amazing to me. And then I got into how the thing worked, right? The whole infrastructure behind the internet, and that really intrigued me.
And then eventually you shifted more to marketing and sales and sort of the business of technology. Was that an easy shift for you? Like, do you sometimes like wish you were back in the days where you were like truly doing engineering stuff?
Absolutely not.
To which one?
I wouldn't go back. It's just like I'm an amateur guitar player in a band, but by no means would I want that to become my profession. It's a great hobby.
Yeah.
And I'm probably not good enough for that to become a professional career. But anyways,
you said your daughter is really good, right?
Yeah, my daughter is much better than I am. But in essence, when I started engineering stuff, I really liked it, but I knew I wasn't going to do this forever.
Interesting.
Because I like working with people, and because it was just, it wasn't enough for me. I liked the innovation, I liked the engineering, I liked inventing stuff, but it's something that I knew was good for that age of 25 to 30, and that I wanted to do more than that.
And when you talk about wanting to do more than that, I'm just if this is wrong, just say no, that wasn't it at all. But I'm going to sort of guess at where you're going with this. There's the engineering side, which it's sort of like you stay in your lane and you're working on the piece or the pieces that you're working on. And then there's sales and marketing and management, where not only are you working with people, but you have the ability to impact on a larger scale. Was that it, the impact?
It's impact, it's control. I mean, you'll find this with a lot of, senior managers and entrepreneurs. You look at stuff and say, oh, I could do that. Maybe I could even do that better. Right. And as you gain more experience and confidence, you actually want to do more. And it's always about going outside of my comfort zone. Otherwise, I get bored.
Right.
So all of my career was about, okay, done this. I need to do something I haven't done before, and then I don't know if I can be successful in. And then, proving to myself, hopefully, that I can, and then moving on. So it's not so much about I always want to do more. It's about I want to do, different things and things that will challenge me. And I'm actually curious to see if I can do well.
And yet, your longest term role at Altair, which ultimately was bought by Sony, you were there for 12 years, correct?
Yeah, it's probably 10 more than we originally anticipated.
And you felt challenged all the way up until the end, or you felt eventually, no, it's time to look for the next thing?
So seeking to be challenged is one important element for an entrepreneur, but one that is not less important is you don't fail. I mean,
Right.
Well, you fail all the time. That's
Sure.
fine, but you have to move on and fail tactically, but try to win in the bigger scheme. So I wouldn't give up. I believed in the cause. I believed in our ability to be successful, and to me it was about you don't give up.
Right.
You got to win. So there were times that I was less challenged than others. But life is not always about, it's interesting and it's challenging and it's fun. Sometimes it's tedious, it's hard, it's frustrating, but you have a goal and you try to not let go until you achieve it.
It's actually a perfect transition
segue
to what you're doing now, because I don't know if you realized what you were getting into when you got into this.
I absolutely did not.
But IVF it's all of what you just described for prospective parents on a personal level. So maybe talk a little bit about how you got into this and what you've learned in the last 3 years.
So like too many things in life, it wasn't planned. I just ended up being introduced to the other co-founders of the company and some of the investors, and this came after a period of time where I was involved in AI software for automotive. So
Right.
I already knew what the potential of AI was in a different space, but again, that really intrigued me, and not so much the technological aspect of it, but more so, okay, what can you do with this thing to, make the world a better place and make money?
Yeah.
And then this opportunity came about, and it just, I couldn't say no. It just so much intrigued me and interested me, and I did my little, due diligence. And I figured, wow, there's a great market opportunity here too. So it's not just about the technology. And of course, the biggest thing, and this is something I always wanted to do, wireless and broadband and internet. And this is all, Internet of Things. It's great, and I enjoyed it a lot, and it was very interesting. But obviously, there was the do good angle that was missing. It was very indirect. How much good it did. And I wanted to, experience it, firsthand of what it means to do something that actually helps people. And of course, I'm not being cynical about it. There's a business model behind it, and
Sure.
you want, to be successful. But it's really something that gives it a different context to me. And I had absolutely no idea what I was getting into, because I had no experience in health tech or med tech.
Right.
I did not understand the challenges, the requirements, the regulatory environment, and we can talk more about that. But just like in many cases, I'm glad I didn't know.
If you're just tuning in, I'm Goel Jasper, and you're listening to Finn Voices on Healthcare Now Radio. I'm talking with Eran Eshed, CEO of Fertility, about where IVF is going thanks to technology and AI. Talk a little bit about that. So the differences between tech and health tech. Do you remember any specific stories in the early days of fertility, or in general, like what were those eye-opening experiences that you had about the differences?
So as someone who comes from a pure, tech background, when we started the company, we were trying to actually figure out what we were. What is our identity? What kind of a company are we? And it could get a little confusing, right? There's, femtech and medtech and health tech. And the interesting thing is that there was not a very clear answer. 3 years ago, Now it became clear because what we're developing falls under a category. It's a medical device basically, but it's a software as a medical device. But back then we didn't know, and we also had very little idea about what the barriers to market were. So we're used to developing things, testing them, more or less, and just running to market and figuring it as we go. And we realized that this approach doesn't work in the health or the medtech space, because the concept of the rigor level, that is expected from a medical device, be it software or hardware, it doesn't matter. Of course, there's different classes, so you may be required to do more or less depending on the class.
Sure.
But we just realized that we cannot do things like we have been used to, and that impacts pretty much anything and everything we do in this company, from what claims we make on the product's functionality and performance. That all has to be subject to MLR, right? Marketing, legal, regulatory review, processes that have to be documented in and out, clinical evidence that customers expect before they even, would test you out.
Right. It's like back in the semiconductor days, you had a customer saying, "Hey, can your product do this, or will it be ready at this time?" You're like, "Yeah, sure, we can." And then you go back and figure out how to get that done. Right?
Exactly.
Here, it's not like that at all.
And I could deliver something and say, "Hey, this functionality works. That one we're going to improve. Just go ahead and test it.
Right.
Let's see if you're happy with what you get now, and we'll give you additional releases." And here, it doesn't work. I mean, you're being asked, "Do you have a CE mark?" I'm not going to use this product in clinical practice until I have that, checkbox.
Right.
So things are different. I'm not saying they're more difficult or less difficult. Each market has their own, and product segment has their own, challenge. But this was a new type of challenge for us, and I think we learned a lot throughout the, past 3 years. We're still not experts in. And by the way, even when you look at what the regulatory bodies expect to see, that's a moving target. Right. Especially when AI is involved, software, and especially AI software. That's something that the regulatory bodies have to completely change the way they qualify and evaluate these products, because it just doesn't work doing it the old way.
Why don't you tell the listeners what it is that fertility does?
That's a good point to
It's
talk
a
about
minor
that.
issue, yeah.
So fertility develops software tools that are based on AI and data science to improve various aspects of the IVF process, from the objective to improve outcomes of the process, throughout improving efficiencies and reducing cost of treatment, that basically increase access to IVF services in the different markets where we operate. So the idea is taking a process that has been almost the same for the last 40 years and is heavily dependent on people's skills and experience and subjective judgment, and automating them, standardizing them, and basing decision-making in these processes on real data and artificial intelligence analysis of that data to improve the, again, outcomes, but also the efficiency, capacity in clinics, reduce the number of hours invested by each healthcare professional in a cycle, removing a lot of the administrative and mundane work from the process, and helping them focus on what only they can do. So it's kind of a autopilot type of a thing, where the healthcare professional becomes just like in a Tesla car, becomes a supervisor of a process rather than the one actually doing each and every manual step in the process.
And other than the sort of efficiency and improved outcomes on a technical level that come with technology and AI, What are you hoping in terms of prospective parents, the impact on them?
I'm glad you asked, because this is
it's not just a simplification of the process to them.
It's often overlooked,
Right.
that aspect. So I'm glad you asked. There's a generational shift. That generational shift is a generational shift for patients, but also the healthcare professionals, doctors, embryologists. You cannot be doing things like you did them, 10 years ago, because your customers, so to speak, expect a different level of involvement, engagement, understanding of what the process is, especially when it's so emotionally and financially, stressful for these patients. So a big part of what we do is provide transparency and explainability to a process that previously was not very explainable. So the doctor would sit with patients, not only after the treatment is done and was not successful, throughout the process. The patients get updated with information about how their embryos are growing, and what the prospects look like of getting 1, 2, 3 blastocysts, which translate potentially into a successful implantation. Many of these things today, and we know, IVF has about a 30% success rate per cycle.
Right.
So that means that you're going to unfortunately have to go through a few failed cycles before you're going to get a successful one on average. And there's very little information that these doctors or embryologists can give you as a patient with respect to why the treatment was not successful. So engaging these patients, explaining, providing transparency is something that you cannot say improves outcomes directly, but when it reduces levels of stress and it makes patients more confident in the kind of treatment they get, this also drives retention, because one of the biggest issues for these clinics is people drop out after one cycle because it's not successful, it's expensive, it's painful, it's stressful, and I don't even know why it failed. What is my guarantee that the next one will be successful? So that is a very important part of what we offer.
I have sort of an unfair question, but I have to ask it. Do you feel when you wake up in the morning or at the end of the day differently working in the world of health tech versus classic tech?
It's a fair question.
Well,
and the answer is
it's
absolutely
unfair.
yes.
It's unfair because, of course, you're going to say yes, but talk about that a little bit if you can.
It's not just about how I feel, and yes, I feel as fulfilled and satisfied as I've ever been in my professional career, because it's not. I don't have to compromise my interest and desire to do something very technological in a profitable market to get the do good aspect. It comes combined.
Yeah.
So to me, it's amazing. But I think what's more amazing is the atmosphere. You're in our offices right now. If you stop a random, engineer or marketing person and ask them, why they work here, I mean, you'll see that spark in their eye. There's an atmosphere here of doing something which is bigger than each of us, and just hearing that people became parents because our embryology assistant called Chloe recommended one option versus the other, and that was the treatment option that was selected. I mean, that's amazing. So it's as fulfilling as can be. Quite honestly, a lot more than a feature in the automotive AI being able to detect a traffic light, which is nice and important.
Sure.
But it's not as rewarding.
Thank you so much, Eran, for inviting me into your office. A very high energy office, I have to say. Beautiful office to talk today. And I'm sure our listeners learned a lot about your journey to health innovation, where IVF is going, and about fertility. Best of success to you as you continue to impact the world.
Thank you, Goel.
Thank you for all listening today. I hope you enjoyed hearing what Eran Eshed, CEO of Fertility, had to say. Be sure to visit the Fin Voices page on Healthcare Now Radio, where you'll be able to listen to previous episodes. Remember to follow hashtag Fin Voices on Twitter and LinkedIn. And if you have any feedback, I'd love to hear from you on LinkedIn. I'm Goel Jasper, and I've appreciated spending time today with Eran Eshed, one of today's voices of health innovation. So long for now.
Fin Voices is brought to you by Fin Partners, a global marketing and communications agency working across industries and services. Whether inside our walls or on the front lines of health transformation, we stand together to create meaningful and measurable impact on the world around us. Learn more at finpartners.com and follow us on Twitter @FinPartners.